The upscale five-star restaurant Aurora Lux shimmered like a Hollywood movie set. Golden chandeliers glowing like miniature suns, crystal glasses chiming like wind chimes, and designer perfume hanging in the air like money itself. Alara Voss, the famously frosty 32-year-old CEO, entered with her 6-year-old son, Evan. She radiated power, icy diamond necklace, sleek black dress, sharp heels clicking like a countdown to something big. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tunning in form? We love seeing how far our stories travel. We love you to subscribe our channel for more interesting single dad stories. Evan held tightly onto her hand, whispering, "Mom, these people are staring at us. I don't like it." His voice was small, anxious, not like the kid born into billions. Alara, eyes forward, responded gently, "Just walk, sweetheart, we're heading to the VIP lounge." But then she froze. Not because of a business rival, not because paparazzi spotted her, but because she saw something she couldn't process. In a small, tucked-away corner of the main dining area sat a single dad in a faded flannel shirt, carefully slicing spaghetti into tiny bite-sized pieces, his tired brown eyes filled with warmth. Across from him was his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, laughing like the world was made of sunshine. There was nothing fancy about their table. No fine wine, no designer outfits, nothing expensive. Yet Evan stared, softly captivated, curious, almost longing. "Mom," he tugged at her sleeve, "I want to sit next to them. They look happy." "That's not where we sit," Alara said, voice tightening. "That's for casual diners." But Evan wouldn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Lily, whose smile was brighter than all the chandeliers in the room. The man, Daniel Hayes, 36, was exhausted but glowing with quiet contentment. He was a delivery driver by day, building maintenance man by night, all to provide for his little girl. They didn't have money, but they had laughter, conversation, and memories they could actually afford. A waiter nearby whispered snidely, "Not sure how that table got in here, probably a mix-up." Daniel pretended not to hear, but his slouched shoulders said otherwise. Alara was about to drag Evan away, but the floor manager stepped in, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, that family appears to be out of place. I can get them moved to a more appropriate cafe area." Alara looked at her son, then at the manager's condescending smirk. Her CEO ice cracked just a little. She walked straight to the humble table, every head in the restaurant turning, phones already recording. Daniel looked up, cue panic. He nearly choked on his water. Alara Voss, the woman who basically owned half the town, standing at his table, no greeting, no smile, no warning. "My son wishes to join your table," she stated. "May we?" Lily, thrilled by this twist of fate, cheerfully blurted. "Yes, you can sit right here, fancy lady." Daniel, flushed with confusion and embarrassment, stood and pulled out a chair as if he'd been trained by royalty. Evan sat next to Lily, grinning like he'd found treasure. They talked about cartoons, about school, about superpowers and favorite breakfasts. And for the very first time, Evan laughed freely, loudly, happily. Alara watched her son more closely than she'd ever watched a billion-dollar contract. And then, in that golden-lit restaurant, she realized all her son's birthday parties, all his expensive toys, all the nannies and caretakers had bought him comfort. But not joy. She looked at Daniel's scarred hands, hands that had lived, worked, cared. Something shifted, something she couldn't explain. Something that scared her more than any hostile corporate takeover. And just when she thought this awkward evening couldn't get any stranger, Evan leaned across the table, holding out his fancy plate of pasta, and asked softly, "Mister, can you cut mine too?" The room went dead silent. Phones stopped recording, but hearts, they just started. Little did Alara know, this humble act of kindness wasn't just cutting pasta. It was cutting straight through the ice around her heart and into a story that would change all their lives forever. Daniel hesitated, looking at the CEO's kid, hair perfectly styled, outfit probably worth more than his monthly rent, holding out his pasta like it was a sacred offering. "Sir," Evan whispered again, eyes soft, "can you cut mine? Just like you did for Lily?" Something about that moment rippled through the entire restaurant. Phones lowered, conversations paused, even the waiters stopped mid-serve. Daniel wasn't sure what scared him more, the billionaire woman sitting across from him or the fragile trust in that tiny voice. He nodded gently. "Sure, buddy." He began slicing the fancy truffle pasta into tiny pieces just like he always did for Lily. Only this time it wasn't just pasta, it was connection. Alara watched, silent, frozen. Almost emotional, she had assistants. Nannies, tutors, the best childcare money could buy, but her son had never looked so calm, so safe. Not with them, not even with her. Suddenly, a wealthy socialite at the neighboring table, Mrs. Harding, dressed like money itself, snapped loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear. "Oh, look, the Voss dynasty dining with janitors. Must be doing charity work." A few people snickered. Daniel lowered his gaze. He was used to it, the invisible class barrier, the side glances, the whispers. He'd built emotional armor, but tonight that armor cracked. Because Lily, his sweet sunshine girl, stood up on her chair, hands on hips, and declared, "My dad is not a janitor. He fixed the whole building's heater last winter when everybody else just cried about being cold. He's like a real-life superhero." Boom, silence. Even Mrs. Harding blinked. Evan stood up too, chest puffed like a small warrior. "Yeah, Mr. Daniel smiles more than all the fancy drivers at my house. Rich people don't know how to smile sometimes. They look constipated." Daniel nearly choked. Alara definitely choked. Some people giggled. Even the waiter cracked a grin. But that wasn't the moment that changed everything. It was what happened next. A different waiter, young, arrogant, looked at Daniel and sneered. "Sir, that dish your daughter ordered is one of our premium selections. Are you sure you can afford that?" Alara's face turned to ice. She stood not with anger, but with power. Her voice dropped cold, sharp, and CEO-level lethal. "Bring 2 more plates of the same dish," she said. "Charge them to my corporate account. And while you're at it, bring them dessert too." The waiter turned pale, apologized, and vanished. Daniel stared at her, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a person. "Why did you do that?" he asked softly. She didn't look at him. She looked at Evan, smiling for the first time that evening. "Because tonight my son chose happiness, and I'm not going to let anyone shame him for it." For the first time in forever, Alara Voss, the woman made entirely of steel, strategy, and silence, smiled. A real, unguarded human smile, and holy heck, it was beautiful. The energy at the table shifted. The tension dissolved. The kids laughed, sharing stories. Daniel finally breathed easier. For a moment, just a moment, labels faded. No billionaire CEO. No single dad, no rich, no poor, just 2 parents watching 2 kids discover friendship. Just when it felt like the night was settling, a flash. A phone, a voice. "Is that Alara Voss having dinner with a mechanic? What a headline!" Daniel stiffened. Alara's mask snapped back on. The serene magic of the moment shattered because this wasn't just dinner anymore. This was about to become a spectacle. But little did any of them know. This dinner wouldn't just go viral. It would flip their lives upside down, crack secrets wide open, and spark a connection no one saw coming, especially Alara. The restaurant buzzed like a beehive full of gossiping millionaires. Some whispered publicity stunt. Some whispered charity case. Others whispered scandal. But the moment that really shook the room didn't involve money, gossip, or fame. It involved something far more real: fear. The kind money couldn't fix. Alara's personal assistant suddenly burst into the restaurant, eyes wide, phone shaking in her hand. Miss Voss, urgent corporate crisis. The board is calling an emergency meeting. Someone's launching a takeover bid against you. They've leaked evidence. Alara froze, her face, usually unreadable, turned white. Her breathing turned shallow, her hand trembled. And for the first time in front of strangers, cameras, her son, she started to crack. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, just Alara, human, scared, vulnerable. Then something happened before anyone could react. Daniel moved. Not slowly, not cautiously, not politely, but with trained precision. He caught her wrist to steady her shaking, checked her pulse, not like a janitor, like a professional. He urgently grabbed sugar packets, ripped them open, poured them into a glass of water, and handed it to her. "Drink." She blinked, startled, but she drank. Everyone watched, no one spoke. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about corporate scandals or viral gossip. It was about humanity, about a woman on the verge of collapse and a man who saw it before anyone else. "Hypoglycemic stress response," he murmured calmly. "Triggered by acute adrenaline and fatigue, keep breathing, you'll stabilize." Alara stared at him, stunned. How did you know what was happening before even my assistant?" Daniel didn't look at her. He looked at Evan, at the scared, confused little boy clutching his mother's arm. "Because your son needs his mom to stay standing," he said quietly. "And no child should watch their mother collapse." Silence, not just any silence. The kind that changes things. Daniel wasn't just some underpaid maintenance guy, not just a single dad. He was more, something more. And Alara saw it, really saw it, for the first time. Minutes passed. Color slowly returned to her face. She stood again, this time not as a CEO, but as a shaken, humbled woman. The kids, oblivious to corporate coups and public meltdowns, ran to the corner of the room, giggling, chasing each other like joy was easy. Daniel and Alara stood watching them. Two totally different worlds, two totally different lives, yet strangely side by side. Daniel spoke first. "Your assistant mentioned a takeover. They're using this against you, aren't they?" Alara nodded bitterly. "Someone wants my chair, and they've got the media ready to tear me down." He looked at her steadily. "That's not just business sabotage," he murmured. "That's psychological warfare." Not business, warfare, different game, and he had played it before. She studied him, this quiet, simple man who wasn't simple at all. "Who are you really?" she whispered. There was something in her voice, fear, curiosity, maybe even hope. Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he answered, voice low, controlled. "Once upon a time, I was someone people depended on, in crises, in war zones, in hospitals. But life flipped my world upside down, so I traded saving lives," he looked toward Lily, "for protecting one life." Alara didn't speak. She couldn't. He didn't just fix pipes. He once fixed people. And right now, he was fixing her, right before her eyes. But just when Alara thought she had discovered Daniel's biggest secret, fate threw a twist she never saw coming, and this time it involved her son. Lily and Evan were running around the VIP lounge, giggling like they had known each other their whole lives. Their laughter echoed through the polished marble and mahogany, filling the cold, high-end space with something rare, warmth. But then everything changed in a single heartbeat. Evan stopped running. He went still, silent, too silent, his happy face drained of color, his little hands clutched his chest. "Mom," he whispered, voice shaking. I can't breathe, Mom, it hurts." Alara froze, again, but this time it wasn't her body failing, it was her son's. She reached for him, but Evan flinched, panicking, gasping for breath, shaking his head violently. The boy wasn't just scared. He was terrified, terrified of losing her. Daniel had seen this before, not in fancy restaurants, but in field tents, in war zones, in emergency rooms. "Panic attack," he said sharply, moving in like instinct. Daniel scooped Evan into his arms, strong and secure, holding him close to his chest. Hey, hey, buddy, look at me, you're safe. Nothing's going to happen. Breathe with me, okay? In and out. He guided the boys, breathing, slow, steady, rhythmic. Alara watched, shaking, helpless. Her son wouldn't let her help. Her son didn't trust her comfort. Her son trusted this man, this complete stranger. Evan, Daniel said gently, you feel my shirt. It's soft, right? Can you tell me what color it is? Evan sniffled. Blue, Daniel smiled. Right, little man, good. Now count the lights above us. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4. The boy's breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed. And then, without even thinking, he rested his head against Daniel's chest, like it was the safest place in the world. Alara's eyes stung. Her chest tightened. Something deep inside her cracked, not from pain, from realization. Her son had never rested like that. Not with any nanny, not with any caretaker, not even with her. Because sometimes trust isn't bought, it's felt. Daniel didn't speak. He just held the boy, a warm, protective presence. Uncle Daniel, Evan whispered softly, voice still shaky. You make things feel okay? And boom, right there, something changed forever. Because Daniel wasn't just the guy who helped at dinner. He had become something else, something more. He had become safe. Alara's voice trembled when she finally spoke, barely above a whisper. How did you do that? He's never calmed down like that before. Daniel looked at her, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, just as a parent. Because I didn't try to fix him, he murmured. I just made him feel seen. Those words hit Alara like thunder. She had built empires. She had led thousands of employees. She had conquered boardrooms. But she had never learned how to comfort her own kid. Before she could process it, her assistant burst back in, panic in her eyes. Miss Voss, your collapse video is viral. Millions of views already. The board is invoking the fitness clause. They're meeting in 1 hour to remove you. Alara stumbled back as if hit. This can ruin everything, my company, my reputation, my entire legacy. Daniel stood, calm, collected, unshaken. You're wrong, he said quietly. This is not the end, this is the beginning. She looked at him, confused, desperate. How? He turned to her, not with sympathy, but with strategy. You don't hide this, he said. You own it. He pointed toward Evan, now peacefully sleeping. They weaponized your weakness. We're going to turn it into your greatest strength. Alara stared at him, not with doubt, but with something shocking, hope. But if she thought Daniel was just here to help her son, she had no idea how far he was about to go to protect both of them, and what secret he was still hiding. The mansion looked like it belonged in a magazine. Marble floors, glass walls, and a chandelier that probably cost more than Daniel's entire apartment building. But for the first time ever, it didn't feel like a cold palace. It felt like life, not because of the decor, not because of the view, but because two kids were running around yelling, "Tag, you're it," and building a fort using $15,000 silk cushions. Evan had never played like this. Not with joy, not with imagination, not like a kid who felt safe. And Alara had never seen him laugh like this. But while the kids played, Daniel stood near the doorway, awkward, unsure, clearly feeling like a misfit in a place where doorknobs probably had their own security codes. This place isn't built for people like me, he muttered. Alara turned to him, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, just as a mom. Tonight, she said softly, it's built for whoever Evan trusts. He glanced over. Evan was laughing, with Lily, with life, with freedom. And deep down, Daniel understood that kind of happiness. You don't buy it, you earn it. Dinner was warm, no fancy manners, no corporate small talk. Just burnt garlic bread, thanks to Lily hitting buttons on the chef's oven, mismatched plates, and laughter echoing through the house like it hadn't in years. But later, when the kids finally passed out on beanbags during movie night, Alara and Daniel sat in the dimly lit library, sipping tea. Not expensive wine, not champagne, tea. What exactly happened to you? She asked quietly. You read people like you've studied them your whole life. You handled my son's panic attack like you've treated hundreds of them before. You read my stress collapse like a diagnosis. He didn't reply immediately. Then finally, I was a trauma surgeon, military field doctor, then crisis psychologist. I trained in behavioral response and battlefield medicine. Alara blinked, not because he was a doctor, but because he was the kind of doctor people depended on when everything went wrong. So why walk away? She asked gently. He looked down. My wife passed away. Silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. She died from a surgery complication, he continued. I was on a call guiding another operation, saving someone else's life. I gave the wrong guidance. I couldn't save her. That hit deeper than anything, not because of tragedy, but because of irony. He had saved countless strangers, but couldn't save his own person. And after that, he said quietly, I didn't want to be a hero anymore. I wanted to be present for Lily, for someone I could protect. Alara didn't respond. She couldn't, because right now she wasn't a CEO. She wasn't $1,000 heels or ice diamond necklaces. She was just a woman who understood grief, loss, and what it meant to love someone but not know how to protect them. Later that night, she looked right at him. Not as an executive, but as a human. I don't want to hire you, she whispered. Daniel frowned. I didn't think you did, she shook her head. No, you don't understand. I don't want the strategist, or the surgeon, or the advisor, she breathed in. I want the man who helped my son feel safe for the first time. Daniel didn't speak. Then she said something that knocked the air from the room. I don't want someone who works for me. I want someone who stands with me. Silence. A different kind of silence. Not awkward, not painful, but heavy, real, beautiful. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't know if I can stand beside someone again, she stepped closer. For Lily, you did, she gestured toward the hall. For Evan, you already did. Then she looked straight into his eyes. And tonight you stood next to me. She didn't smile, she didn't flirt, she didn't charm, she simply told the truth. And that was stronger than any negotiation. But just when Daniel started believing he might have found a place to belong, someone from his past appeared, ready to drag him right back into the life he swore he'd never return to. Morning light poured into the Voss mansion like warm honey. For once, it didn't feel like a cold glass fortress. It felt like a home. At the breakfast table, Lily and Evan sat side by side, building Lego towers and arguing about which superhero was cooler, Iron Man or Spider-Man. It got heated. Daniel stood by the coffee machine, looking very out of place next to a device that probably cost more than his used Honda. He pressed one button, nothing, pressed another, still nothing. Evan casually walked by and said, Oh, you gotta say, hey, Voss Brew 1. Its voice activated. Daniel blinked. Your coffee machine takes orders like Siri? Yup, Evan grinned. But she gets moody if you ask for decaf. Daniel shook his head. Fancy, Lily giggled. My daddy still uses instant coffee. Evan gasped dramatically. That's barbaric. Daniel rolled his eyes. Kids these days. But across the kitchen, Alara stood watching. Not just observing, admiring. Daniel wasn't just in the house. He fit in it. In a way no guest ever had, not by style, not by money, but by presence. He didn't fill the house with wealth. He filled it with warmth. Something her billion-dollar world didn't know how to buy. But just when peace was settling in, the doorbell rang. Not a polite ring. A firm, sharp, military-style knock. Daniel stiffened instantly. He knew that knock. He had felt that knock before, when life used to look very different, before he ever touched a wrench, before he ever packed Lily's lunchbox, before he left behind that world. He opened the door, and there he stood. Captain Marcus Hale, U.S. Military Medical Command. A man built like discipline, dressed in regret, carrying news Daniel never wanted to hear again. "Hayes," he said quietly. "We need you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "No," Marcus sighed. He expected that. "You don't even know what I'm going to ask." Daniel's eyes were calm, steady. "I do." Marcus glanced past him straight at Lily and Evan, playing, smiling. "Safe, you have a life now," Marcus said softly. "But understand this, there are people dying because the only man who could save them walked away." Alara had walked into the hallway silently, listening. "You're a doctor?" she asked Marcus. Marcus nodded. He wasn't just a doctor, he was the doctor, a trauma strategist, clinical lead, field response crisis coordinator. The Army still uses protocols he designed. Alara looked at Daniel. Daniel looked away. "I'm not that man anymore," he said firmly. Marcus shook his head. "That's the problem, Hayes. The world still needs him." The kids ran into the hall, laughing. "Uncle Marcus!" Lily yelled, recognizing him, and just like that, the tension shifted. Marcus knelt, smiling genuinely. "Hey, Peanut. You growing tall enough to outrank me now?" Lily giggled and gave him a big hug. Daniel watched. He wasn't just looking at a fellow soldier, he was looking at his past and his possible future. Alara spoke softly. "What are you asking him to give up?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. Daniel already knew. Saving lives or protecting his own. Being needed by the world or being present for one little girl. Being useful or being home. Marcus left with one final sentence. Every hero has two lives, the one he chooses and the one that keeps calling him back. The door closed. Silence filled the space, not the empty kind. The heavy kind, the kind that makes you choose. Daniel stared at his daughter, laughing with Evan, happy, safe, secure. Then he looked at Alara, strong, brave, but quietly afraid. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. He looked at her and said something he never thought he'd say again. "I don't know." But what Daniel didn't realize was that fate wasn't forcing him to choose between saving lives and protecting a family, because soon he would have to do both at the same time. The mansion's living room, once quiet, was now buzzing, not with laughter, not with warmth, but with tension. Alara sat on the edge of the couch, rubbing her temples. Daniel stood by the window, staring out, not at the view, but at the battlefield inside his head. Two worlds, two missions, two kinds of saving lives, save strangers like he used to, or save the little world he built with Lily. "Daniel," Alara finally said gently, "you don't have to decide right now." He turned, frustrated. "But that's the thing, I do. Lily deserves stability, not a father who could disappear on a phone call. Not a suitcase instead of a home." He paused, voice tightening. "She deserves a dad, not a hero." Alara stepped closer. "Heroes aren't the ones who save everyone," she said softly. "Heroes are the ones who show up where they are needed most." Daniel looked at her, not as a powerful CEO, but as a woman who knew what it felt like to lose someone to ambition. To be replaced not by another person, but by purpose. She understood him, not logically, emotionally. That night Daniel put Lily to bed. She held his hand a little tighter than usual. "Daddy," she whispered. "Yeah, Peanut. You don't want to go away again, do you?" The word hit him again. She remembered the military trips. The nights she waited for him, the phone calls, the promises, some kept, some not. He brushed her hair back gently. "I promise you I'm right here." She studied his face. "Your eyes," she whispered, "they look like when you used to leave." That broke him. His throat tightened. His chest ached. He hugged her tighter, not as a father promising, but as a father realizing the biggest heartbreak he could cause wasn't leaving. It was making her wonder if he would. Downstairs, Alara waited, not with questions, not with pressure, just presence. Daniel sat, no words, she didn't push. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I'm scared," he admitted, not afraid of war, not afraid of hospitals, not afraid of failure, but afraid of choosing wrong. I don't know if I'm meant to save lives out there, he whispered, pointing toward the world. Or in here, he looked toward the hallway, where two little souls were sleeping peacefully. Alara placed her hand gently over his. You won't have to choose forever, but tomorrow morning at the emergency board meeting, you'll have to stand for something. Daniel looked at her. Stand for what? She didn't hesitate. For the very thing everyone else forgot. He raised a brow. Which is, she smiled softly, heart. The next morning, live streamed, broadcasted, front-page news, millions watching, the emergency shareholder meeting. Alara walked in, calm, composed, but not cold, not alone. Daniel walked in beside her, and in front of them, holding hands, Evan and Lily, not props, not distractions, but purpose. The board members looked confused, whispers, murmurs, cameras flashing. Daniel stepped forward, straight to the mic. Not a CEO, not a soldier, not even a strategist. He stood as a dad. As parents, he began, we talk about legacy all the time, but legacy isn't money, it isn't power. It isn't even success. It's what we leave, he looked at the kids. Inside them, he paused, let that sink in. Here's what Miss Voss did wrong. She didn't collapse because she was weak. She collapsed because she was overworked, overwhelmed, and emotionally exhausted, like thousands of working parents across this country. Heads began to nod, even the stone-faced board members. She didn't collapse because she was unfit to lead, Daniel continued steadily. She collapsed because she was trying to lead alone. Silence, powerful silence. Then clapping, slowly, from board members, from staff, from employees watching virtually. Not because they had to, because they felt it. Alara looked at him, and with the softest expression she'd ever worn, she mouthed two words, thank you, but the real shock wasn't the applause, wasn't the acceptance, wasn't even the fact that the takeover was officially dead. It was what Alara did next. She didn't take the microphone, she took Daniel's hand, publicly, in front of everyone, and didn't let go. But just when the world finally saw them as a team, Alara would have to make a decision that would test everything. Her heart, her trust, and whether she was ready to let Daniel into the one place she never had before, her life. The emergency meeting ended, but something much bigger had just begun. Not the corporate restructuring, not the new director appointments, something personal, something real, something human. The cameras were gone, the boardroom was empty. The noise had faded, but one thing hadn't. Daniel's hand, still holding Alara's, not by accident, not for support, but with intention. Evan and Lily waited just outside the boardroom in a sleek lobby, sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring on the back of a shareholder report. The most expensive coloring paper in the world. See, Lily said proudly, pointing at a badly drawn stick figure. That's your mom, she's holding a shield. Oh, like Captain America? Evan asked. No, Lily said, never missing a beat. Like my daddy. Daniel's heart did that weird thing again, the thing he thought broke years ago, but somehow kept beating for moments like this. Back at the mansion, not the cold, echoing monument of success, but the home in progress. Evan and Lily crashed onto beanbags and watched cartoons. Alara stood by the terrace, overlooking the city lights. She didn't look like a CEO tonight. She looked like a woman who had finally exhaled. Daniel walked out to join her. You saved my company, she said softly. You saved my son, he replied. She smiled. No, you helped me become a mom again. They stood quietly, not needing small talk, not needing noise. Just presence. Finally, Alara turned to him, vulnerable, human. I've spent my entire life protecting something. My company, my image, my heart. He didn't say anything, she continued. But lately, her eyes softened. I don't want to protect everything. I want to protect someone. Silence, powerful silence. Daniel gently touched her hand. And sometimes, he murmured, we don't need protection. We need permission. She looked at him. Permission to do what? He didn't rush. He didn't overthink. He just told the truth. To stop surviving and start living. Inside, the kids had built a blanket fort in the living room, complete with pillows, flashlights, and goldfish crackers. Family fortress, Lily declared when Daniel walked in. Only for people we love, Daniel smiled. Does that include me? Evan shook his head. Nope, you don't visit forts, Uncle Daniel. You live in them. That hit him harder than any battlefield moment. Harder than any decision he'd ever made. Because that was it. That was the choice, not duty versus purpose, not the world versus one child, but loneliness vs belonging. Later that night, when Lily was tucked in and fast asleep, she murmured one sleepy sentence. Daddy, this house feels warm now. That was it. He didn't need a sign. He didn't need permission. He had it. He looked at Alara across the hall, holding Evan's hand as he fell asleep, and he knew. Not just where he needed to be, but where he belonged. Final scene, a morning weeks later. 4 shadows walking toward a car, not 2, 4. A single dad, a former Ice Queen CEO. 2 kids laughing, not lonely, not a perfect family, but a real one. Daniel didn't just get a new job, he got his purpose back and his heart. Alara didn't just save her company. She finally unlocked her own. Lily didn't just get a stable life. She got something better, a home. Evan didn't just get a father figure, he got dad. And just like that, it wasn't a story about a CEO and a janitor. It was about a woman who stopped hiding behind power, a man who stopped running from purpose, and 2 little hearts, who made them both believe in love again. Sparkles, if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs hope today.